Hello, everyone. I am Lindsay, and welcome to the July Sydney DevOps meetup. I've got my co-organizer, Michael, lurking somewhere in the background. I think I let him in. Hope I let him in. He's around. So yeah, we're Lindsay and Michael, and we've been doing this for a little bit over 10 years now, which is lots of fun. First things first, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia. In my case, that is the Guringai people, but given that this is a completely distributed meetup, your people might be very, very different. I want to recognize their continuing connection to land, water, and culture, and pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. So welcome to the worldwide edition of the Sydney DevOps meetup. We've got a huge cast of, it's like the Ben-Hur worldwide edition. We've got a huge cast of international speakers phoning in today, which is really lovely to see, and a whole bunch of out-of-staters as well. I'm noticing that are trickling in as attendees. So it's lovely to have you all here today. Just want to do a quick reiteration of the code of conduct, given that we are in a virtual meeting space. Want to reiterate that the code of conduct still applies here. So we don't tolerate harassment of any meetup participants in any form. So we expect that all communication here is appropriate for a professional audience. And harassment and sexist, racist, or exclusionary jokes are not appropriate here. It's really easy for me to moderate that because we're in a Zoom and I can just kick you. I'm not going to do that unless you do something douchey, but I just wanted to set the expectation early on. All right, tonight's agenda, we've got the intro, which is the thing that I'm doing right now. Then we've got the main talk. Then we're going to roll into a quick events and jobs section. Then some lightning talks. So tonight for the main talk, we've got Sebastian Korfmann calling in from good old Germany, talking about AWS, the AWS Cloud Development Kit 101. So a bit of a primer on that, which should be lovely to see. And then we have a long stretch of lightning talks as well, all 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, we've got, actually that order is slightly incorrect. I'll have to fix that. But first up, we've got Matt Zeier calling in from San Francisco. It is 1 o'clock where he is, 1 a.m. So thanks, Matt. You are first cab off the rank there when we get to lightning talks. Then we've got Raji from Zoho Corp in India talking about why SRE and DevOps are essential during COVID-19. We've got Stefan, Caliaro from Sydney talking about hardening WordPress security. And we've got Isha Dalal from NAB in Sydney as well. Actually, that order is incorrect, so Isha is actually going to be second up, but I'll fix that in a second. Not so good at editing live. Right, so this is going to be an interesting one. Normally we do this one with a show of hands when we're all physically in the same room. We are clearly not all physically in the same room, as you can probably tell, given how you're phoning into this call. So quick show of hands if you turn on your cameras, or you could use the little prompts in the Zoom chat. Who here is a first timer to the meetup tonight? Hey, I can see a thumbs up emoji. Awesome. There's a couple there. Brilliant. And this is sort of a trick question, given this is an international edition of the meetup. I'm trying to work out who the furthest person away is. I think it might be Sebastian, given that he's calling in from Germany. But do we have anybody calling in from the UK or Portugal or anything like that? No, it doesn't sound like it. All right. Well, congrats, Sebastian. You win the prize. The prize is our praise. All right, so let's just roll into the first talk. We've got Sebastian talking about the AWS Cloud Development Kit and doing a bit of a 101 on that. So I am, there's a Hong Kong in there. That's brilliant. Oh yeah, I should mention as well, we've got the Zoom group chat. So there's feel free to comment away in that. It can definitely be a little bit distracting, but oh cool, Hong Kong, Tokyo. Wow, this truly is an international edition. All right, I'm going to seek control of the screen here, and I'm going to hand it over to Sebastian.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. So I'm just trying to figure out how to share the screen here and which desktop to share. So that's the one, I guess. Oh. Oh. Looks like I have to set the preferences. I'm on a new machine, so bear with me. Hang on.
No worries. It's sort of like the joy of a normal meeting on Zoom where everybody's trying to work out how to screen share, except we're going to do it at least 5 times because of all the different speakers. So buckle up, everyone.
Privacy change. No. So how do I allow screen sharing for Zoom? Anyone has an idea how to do that? It should request the authorization, but it isn't for some reason.
There might be a helper that you need to install. I haven't done it recently. Tell you what we might do, though. I'm going to give you like 5-10 minutes to work out what's happening there. Matt, if you're up for it, did you want to go first with your lightning talk now?
I could, if that makes it easier.
Yeah, just to keep things flowing a little bit nicer.
Sure.
And also get you off to bed a little bit sooner.
Okay, let me move stuff out of my way on my screen.
Oh, good. We can see that pretty clearly.
Great. My name is Matthew. I was just looking at TripIt. I was in Sydney almost a year ago presenting, and I'm not traveling anymore, but it's kind of cool to kind of be back and present. So I want to kind of share a project that turned into a science project. I started Lacework about 2 months ago. Prior to that, I was at a monitoring company. So some of this was stuff I had worked on there. And the challenge was how do I replicate offsite monitoring without spending a bunch of money? And so just real quick, Lacework does automated cloud security. It's a marketing slide. If you want to know more, talk to me later. So I put this up on GitHub so you can kind of play along with some of the code that I put up there. But the idea was to leverage what Amazon has and just spawn a bunch of computers around the globe and have a version of ThousandEyes or MillionEyes that does the same sort of website polling. But kind of do it with an open source method and then send the metrics to some time series platform. So those are the URLs if you want to play along. And so deploying it, I just decided to do the whole thing in code. So there's a bit of Terraform code that doesn't do much. It just sort of creates VPCs and subnets. It finds the latest Ubuntu image, it launches that. I'm trying to be cost sensitive, so I can just spawn T3s. And they're just doing HTTP checks, so it's not like a compute heavy task. And if you look at some of the commercial alternatives, you get charged per check or frequency of checks. And here, I don't have that constraint. I'm just paying for a T3 instance type. And then I piggybacked on with some Ansible code that actually does the OS configuration, installing some nicer sane defaults for the OS, especially like a host name that is meaningful to me. Adds Telegraf. There's a template in there where I template out the HTTP response plugin. And if you look at the top of the playbook, there's a dictionary of all the sites I'm going to look at. And then, I came from a company called Wavefront, so I kind of built this using the Wavefront proxy as well. So now I'm going to switch to a live demo here. So just real quick, I spawned this in 2 regions in Amazon, one on the East Coast of the US and one on the West Coast. So this is more central United States. That's one. And then I have my other one. So you can see the running. I kind of cheated in the code since I don't really care about the private IPs. You'll see in the code, they all have the same exact private IP, but I only care about the EIP. Everything else is pretty identical, and they're locked to my home IP address. So I can SSH in, and that's kind of it. And then with that, I can send outbound telemetry. And so I just kind of mocked up a dashboard in Wavefront, but you could do the same thing in Datadog or Influx or pick your tool. but I can kind of look at the different sites I have. I'm doing API checks against a certain endpoint. I can see how many checks are up, how many are down. And then I have the stuff I really care about, response time metrics. And what I really care about are these SLIs. And this one actually had a failure this morning or yesterday morning. So I kind of track these SLIs over time. I can pick one that hasn't failed. So this is interesting because now the team can kind of debug our own data instead of looking at something like ThousandEyes or Catchpoint. And then we can build alerts off that, meaningful alerts, so they can correlate my alert with other things going in the system. So if I do deployment and I have a website failure, I'll see that and I can see the data all on one site. So that was the demo. I don't know if you guys have any questions. It was kind of quick. It's not the most groundbreaking thing, but I thought it is an interesting science project to kind of tie all these pieces together and build my own version of an offsite monitoring platform.
It's awesome. Any questions for Matthew on this one?
Wow, thanks, guys.
Awesome. Lovely to have you. Feel free to clock right off. It is like 1:15 where you are right now. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, this is kind of fun. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Hang around then. We've got a caffeinated beverage to keep you going. All right. I'm going to try handing it back to Sebastian. Yeah, how are you going at the moment?
Yes. Yeah, I think it should be working.
Brilliant. All right.
Something was stealing the focus, and so yeah. Anyway.
Take it away.
So I once tried once again. There we go. You should see my screen, right?
Yeah, it's looking great. Thank you.
Still?
Yep.
Yep, cool. Awesome. So AWS CDK. Yeah. So it's the cloud development kit, which Lindsay's had already. And it's sort of like an infrastructure as code tooling. So sort of in the same class as Terraform or like Pulumi or like similar things. And I think the first commit was actually done in 2017, but like it was publicly available, I think like mid of 2018. And that's actually when I started to look in it like the first time, I think in August or so, 2018. And it looked pretty promising, but by this time we weren't really able to use it in the project. But I kept following this project, and I think it's quite a nice tool for defining cloud resources. Since like one of the taglines is essentially make it fun and easy to define CloudFormation resources, and I think that's really what it does, and that's what I'm trying to show you. And I'm going to go through the different points here, and towards the end or so, I will do a little demo, which is not too fancy, just a little server, like a little web service which we are going to deploy, so that you get a grasp of what this is doing. I will touch a little bit on the internals, but won't really going too deep there, since, well, I think this will be a lot to digest. Anyway, so the essential setting point is really this in the end. So on the left-hand side, you see like the CloudFormation template, and on the right-hand side, you see a CDK stack, which essentially synthesizes to the left-hand side CloudFormation template, which is not all, so since it's on the screen, I think it's about like, I don't know, like perhaps 500-600 lines or so of CloudFormation, which will be synthesized out of this. And I think that's a really, well, just looking at the screen, from my point of view at least, it's really already a game changer. So if you have done any CloudFormation stuff, it's, well, it's fiddling around with lots of YAML, and sure, there's tooling to help you with that, but I'm personally convinced that it's a tooling which the CDK provides is pretty advanced, and solves lots of problems which you might have on a daily basis. So, but besides from this, one of the I think one of the intentions, or like one of the goals of the CDK and the philosophies of this is really, rather than having to reinvent the wheel all the time, it's trying to provide abstractions based on CloudFormation and trying to reflect the intent that you might want to do. So in this example, we have an ECR resource, like an abstraction of ECR. So I just copied this out of one of the packages there. And in Terraform, or like another tooling, or like in plain CloudFormation, you probably go and define those actions, those permissions by your own. And I've done this quite a lot over the course of the last 2 years. And it was all the time going to the IAM documentation and figuring out, okay, which kind of permissions do I actually need? How do I specify this, and so on and so forth. And here you get like a few methods, a few functions which reflect the intent. Grant pull to this image, this Docker image, or grant pull or push to this Docker image. And you don't have to care about the details, you just make it work. And this takes, so those functions are taking this iGrantable interface, like resources which are matching this, which could be any resource, right? This could be like a task definition for a Fargate task, like for a Docker image thingy in AWS, or I don't know, like an IAM user, like a role, whatever it is in the end, right? So this makes it pretty straightforward to define access level permissions between different resource types, which is pretty convenient, pretty great if you use it on a daily basis. Then besides from this, I think what they're doing, what the AWS CDK team is doing, they provide essentially a standard library for all the AWS services. So I did a quick count. It's like about 150 services which they wrap at the moment, or like not essentially. It's all of them are actually services, but like a few packages are also abstractions. So, but I think it's pretty much for all the services there are packages. But at the moment, not all of them contain actual abstractions. So we come to this in a few slides, I think. What I mean by abstractions. So yeah, bear with me. And yeah, so, but like I think the gist is whatever service you might have, or whichever service you might have to deploy, there's certainly a package for this, and it depends on how usable and how easy it is to use. But I think the evergreen services are certainly there, like pretty much all the serverless stuff, EC2 of course, and yeah, so I think yeah, most of them are there. For the components, like what does the AWS CDK actually consist? And well, there's this concept of constructs, which I'll explain in a second. Then there is JSII, which is sort of the engine which makes the polyglot packages work, so that you can define your resources once in TypeScript and distribute it in different languages. And then the AWS CDK itself, so like the CLI and all those things. And yeah, let's quickly go through this. So construct. So when you work with the CDK, constructs will be with you all the time. So like no matter what you deal with some kind of construct. And there are different kind of constructs conceptually. And the AWS CDK team has defined like 3 different abstractions or 3 different type of constructs, levels. Where the first level is level 1, which is really just auto-generated from the CloudFormation spec. So little or like no actual interaction, like manual labor, which is involved there. It's just generating plain out of the CloudFormation spec the resources, and out of these generated constructs, there's actually then a level 2 construct which provides those nicer APIs and makes those intent-driven APIs work, right? So It provides like an abstraction, which makes it easy to consume. And this picture here is like a bit simplified. So there are like more cross references, especially around core services like permissions, authorization, networking and stuff. So those level 2 constructs usually reference like a bunch of other like a secondary packages, likely level 2 as well. So the dependency tree is not only going like up and down, it's also going like sideways. and I think with level 2 constructs, you can quite comfortably develop your cloud application in the end. And for level 3 constructs, those are actual patterns. And I will show you in the demo, we'll work with one of those patterns, which usually is, well, a few lines of code, and it will give you like an entire thing, like this load balance web service, for example, like a load balancer, like a Fargate service, I don't know, like logging, the underlying network, and I don't know, like a bunch of things. And the AWS CDK itself provides all of those levels in like, it's like standard library. But as I said, like to a different extent, like I think I don't have any ratio here, but like for all services, we do have the level 1 constructs as far as I'm aware. Since they are auto-generated, it's like pretty low effort. Level 2 is already quite a bit of effort to get this right. So there's not for every service is level 2 construct, and level 3 constructs are like patterns. I think recently there was quite a lot of work around I think step functions, and I'm not sure if this just was level 2 or if there also was level 3 like actual usage patterns for step functions. So yeah, but so that's basically the picture which you have to keep in mind. And that also reflects like a bit the structure in your code in the end. So since, of course, you can define your own constructs, you can define your own, usually probably level 3 constructs, like abstract, like few usage patterns which you have in your daily work, in your organization. And well, since it's code, you can just ship it as like an npm package, or like a Python package, whatever it is in the end. Python packages, which brings us to JSII. And JSII is really, everything boils down to JS in the end. And I'll show you what this means. So here's a screenshot on the left-hand side about this load balance Fargate service, which I mentioned a few times already. And this is straight out of the ECS patterns package. And taking this definition, what JSII is doing as a tool is converting this in like an assembly file, which is essentially just a JSON definition, like a huge JSON file which contains all the definitions. And you can see here, like it's taking this out of this class, it has a name and so on and so forth. So it's essentially includes all the type information, which is important. It includes the type information, and it's using this as a basis to generate polyglot libraries, TypeScript, C#, Java. Yeah, I think there's probably like a few more in the works, but I think those are the main targets at the moment. And out of this assembly file, you can then generate, in this case, a Python class. What you can notice here is it really, again, only includes the type information, and it doesn't really include any logic. Which means you'll be able to use this Python package alongside your customly written Python code. But since it only contains type information and it's using the JSII runtime to communicate with a node version of this, basically. So it's really essentially like a proxy in the end, right? So this is a screenshot out of the documentation of JSII. So you don't have to understand this, but I think the key takeaway here is So even though you have like a polyglot library, it's actually running Node inside. So it's churning out the Node process, and the communication happens via JSON. So like, the data is serialized via JSON and played back and forth. So that this makes sense. Which means, like, even though you have Python packages, you have C# packages, in the end, you're still using Node under the hood. And while this is not really the fastest, so it doesn't make sense to build your web app with something like this, right? But when you think about this from the infrastructure perspective, it's really, well, does it matter if it takes, like, I don't know, like a microsecond or like a millisecond? It's probably not really difficult, not really like a huge difference for build time tasks, basically. Yeah, so again, keep this JSI thing in mind, but yeah, you only need this if you actually want to distribute packages. So in your daily work, you can just, I don't know, grab the Python package, run it, and you don't have to care about the details. And yes, the tooling around this is actually quite good. So it's even if you distribute packages, it's, well, as long as it works, it's quite straightforward. Yeah, so which brings us to the AWS CDK itself. And what this is in the end is doing, so it's taking our code and is synthesizing this to a CloudFormation template. And as part of this, or like as part of the deployment process, it's also handling potential assets. Like if you have like lambda functions where you have to deploy some code, or if you have, I don't know, like a Docker image, or like like assets which you have to have as part of your deployment, since the deployment itself still happens via CloudFormation. So it's not running locally. It's really taking all the stuff, packaging it up, it's uploading assets, pushes the template to CloudFormation, and then CloudFormation is actually doing the work. Which also imposes some challenges, or like when you think about doing your like writing your infrastructure application, it takes some time to get used to that there's like a compile time and there's an actual deploy time. So there's like two different things, right? So like when you synthesize your code, so you can't really, there are like a few limitations that you can't really do, which you would expect if you had like a fully fledged like TypeScript environment where it would just, everything would run in the same process. So you have to think about like at which time, what is available. And I think for the most part, the CDK is abstracting this quite good. So like, even though it's not running locally, it sometimes feels like it would run locally. So yeah, but there are like a few scenarios where this still is like a bit annoying. And yes, like for myself, it's then, or like I think for pretty much everybody who's using the CDK, is like the CDK CI is actually the primary interface, like for like interacting with CloudFormation. So while you probably could synthesize a template and upload it manually, as long as you don't have any assets, it's probably quite okay. But as soon as you have like a more complex stack with assets and things, then yeah, I wouldn't really recommend doing it manually. Yeah, so let's get to a little demo. I think you can still see my screen, yeah. Right, so since, well, we're a bit limited on time, so I just prepared pretty much everything here. So this is like a stack in Terraform speak, and those packages are coming from the CDK. Those are like the core standard library packages, which I was talking about. This here is like a custom construct, which I will show like in a few seconds. And then you have always the notion of stacks, right? So like you have like, you could have multiple stacks. But in our case, we just have like one stack, and this is the equivalent to like a CloudFormation stack in the end, right? So this will be synthesized, and this will be equal to like one CloudFormation stack in the end. And yeah, so it's all TypeScript. It's like a bit of configuration, and you just create like a few instances of those classes here, and that's basically the definition of like a fully fledged load balanced target service. I added this SSL domain since by default it just falls back to HTTP. And this is like how like a custom construct would look like, right? So you just define like your TypeScript class, put in the resources which you need, and off you go basically. And all your stacks, in our case it's just one, but it could be multiple, will be wrapped up in the CDK app, which is the container for your different stacks basically. Yeah, and with that, you can essentially...
Can you make that text a bit bigger, Sebastian?
Oh yeah, sure.
Sorry, enhance.
Does it work?
Yeah, even a little bit bigger is good. Perfect.
Like
Thank
this?
you. Yeah, great.
So that was the wrong window.
I'm going to need you to enhance that particular window as well. It looks like, yeah, perfect. Great. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Right. So we do this for the stack which we just saw, and you see, well, the div is, if you know Terraform, it's pretty much a similar thing, which shows you what would happen if you would deploy. And well, you see like a bunch of parameters. You see, which I personally quite like, is you see permission changes. So like of all those resources which will be deployed, which permissions will be changed. And I think that's quite important, since well, you pull in various packages from potentially not really trusted sources, or like at least unknown sources. Even though you should look into whatever you pull in, it's still it's still good to see which permission would be changed, security groups, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and then you can actually deploy this stuff. And why this is deploying? So I deployed this like a few times. It will take roughly, I don't know, like about 5-ish minutes or so. I will show you what the CDK itself is doing. So here's just like a progress bar and so on and so forth. So if we just deploy like 54 resources, and all the synthesizing things, this is what it's actually doing. So our stack got converted into like a bunch of files. And this is really the CloudFormation template, which gets, oh, I probably should make the text a bit bigger again. So this is the CloudFormation template, which got synthesized out of our stack, out of our like code definitions. Yeah, and you can see it's like, yeah, so it's like 1,200 lines of code. I'm not sure, like I haven't really, to be honest, I haven't really done lots of manual CloudFormation work, so I'm not sure if you could, or if it would be condensed if you would do it, you know, like manually. Probably would be, I'm not sure. But yeah, again, it's like, I personally wouldn't really want to do this by hand. So which I, yeah. So these are just like a few header files, which I think the CDK needs internally to do its thing, in particular around like multiple stacks. And then you see here, we have like, in this case, we have an asset. And if you have assets, you actually have to like do like a CDK bootstrap, which I did earlier on, which will mainly create like an S3 bucket to host your assets, so CloudFormation can access those assets. And this asset is a custom resource which does a DNS validation for the certificate. right? So it comes out of the box with one of those resources which I put in from the core library of the AWS CDK. So I don't have to worry about this. And usually it just works. So and I think that's really, in the end, that's all the magic, right? So it takes a CloudFormation spec, it generates packages out of it, abstracts those packages, you can use those abstract packages, and in the end, you're all just generating CloudFormation again, basically. So you take configuration and you end up with configuration. In between is the abstraction to make you comfortable and make you faster doing your thing. And when we look at the pattern itself, so this is the AWS CDK itself, the core package. This is the ECS pattern which we are using, so the application load balanced Fargate service. And right, so it's just doing like a bunch of things, and it's utilizing like the actual level 2 construct, which is the ECS package, and probably like a bunch of other things as well. And it's really just abstracting those things. Right, and so I did compile this via the JSII as well, just for the demonstration purposes. And this is like how this assembly file looks like. This is the JSON which we saw, and it's really huge. Like it's like a bunch of things. And those are the packages which were generated. Right, so like for this particular package here, and I think this, like taking this entire thing, like the entire AWS CDK package, and compile it end to end. I saw some tweets like on really beefy machines, it's still taking like ages, like I don't know, like 40 minutes or so, like an hour. I'm not really sure, but it's like you have to manage like 150 packages, and for each of those packages, you're compiling native packages for Python, Java, and C#. You're creating all the CloudFormation specs and so on and so forth. It's like it takes a while. But again, this is only like build time if you're interested in actually contributing to the CDK. And yeah, at the moment, those which we saw here, those packages. Maybe you have to go back to the stack here. So these are actually individual packages. And I think in the next major version of the AWS CDK, I think there's a plan to go for like more like a mono package distribution model, since it's quite cumbersome to, like, first of all, quite cumbersome to get all the different packages which you need. So you have to actually do like an npm or yarn install. Then you have to make sure that the versions are aligned. Like when there's like a new version release and you add like yes, other packages, it might be like a different version than the other ones, and then it's like a mismatch, and this is like a bit tricky. But I think this will be easier later on. Oh, there we go. So it took, yeah, well, 5.5 minutes to deploy those 54 resources, and we actually got like some working application. Well, it happens to be this image here from the Docker registry, which is just an ECS sample thing, but you could essentially do like whatever it is, like either from ECR, the Docker service from Amazon directly, from AWS directly, or like any Docker image, and off you go, basically. And yeah, so the domain is coming from this thing which we created. And but this is quite good. I think where the power truly comes into play is when you do something like this. So you have to imagine you have your stack and you have a bunch of resources, and in the end, what you have is a tree of resources, right? So each of those constructs here, each of those classes will wrap like a bunch of other resources. And so each of those things here is essentially like a node in the tree. You have your application, you have your stack, you have the VPC, the cluster, and then the resources which are contained in this. And if you have a tree, you can easily navigate the tree, or you can do things, which in this case makes use of aspects, which is a concept in the CDK to visit all nodes in the tree, or like, and do things based on a certain condition. And the CDK tag aspect is in the end something which allows you to tag all the resources for the given node in the tree, in this case a stack, so all of the resources, but it could be a subset, and add something there, right? And if you do the diff here, well, it will show you, okay, whatever is taggable will be just tagged with a key team and the value DevOps name, which is like a pretty simple example, but I think it shows what you actually can do. And you can't do this in like static defined resources, but here you can go build up the tree, and then when everything is done, you can still go and alter all the resources, or like some resources based on criteria. Tagging is one example. What I also did was stubbing Lambda functions. So, right, you could find all the Lambda functions and replace them with a stub for testing, for example. But I'm sure there are like many other use cases where this is really helpful. In particular, in cases where you're going to distribute like a bunch of packages. Like publicly, probably not so important, but I think within the context of an organization where multiple teams have to use perhaps centrally defined resources, constructs, and then I think in those scenarios this becomes quite interesting. Yeah, there are a few gotchas. In particular, the first one bit me like a bit. So at the moment, it's only synchronous, which you wouldn't really expect in a TypeScript environment. And yeah, there are still ways to do this, but it's like a bit ugly. Yeah, I talked about the package version alignment already, so this will probably be not an issue anymore in the next major version. And one of the best practices from my point of view in software engineering is still like you do like refactoring when it's appropriate, and that's still, since you're dealing with state, which you have to, like the state path basically is derived from the position in the tree of those constructs, which means when you move one construct from one position in the tree to another position in the tree, the name will change. I think you can override this. You can force it to be the old ID, but it's not really something that you will enjoy doing. So it's probably still, blue-green deployments. So getting rid of the old stack and deploying everything from scratch for if you do like serious refactorings, which is like a bit sad, but I think it's just the fact that you deal with state, and state is always difficult. So why I think it's the thing I will keep using, the CDK. Sure, like you have like actual programming languages, which is from my point of view way easier to consume than some YAML or JSON. Well, you have composable constructs, right? So different levels which you can compose. You can build your own constructs and distribute them internally. The standard library is really useful. So I was looking into this, and I think trying to build everything from this by yourself is next to impossible. In particular, since I think there's like lots of influence from the actual AWS teams which own those services. So yeah, I think this is a huge benefit for this. And yeah, of course, since you have NPM or I don't know, like other package managers, it's actually easy to do dependency management compared to like Terraform modules, for example, where you have like sort of like at least like a bit version management, but yeah, it's not really what I would have in mind. And while it's been around for like more than 2 years already, it's still emerging. I think it's been generally available last year or so, and but I think it's picking up speed this year, and will be probably mainstream next year, I guess. So there is the CDKs project, which is also by the same team of AWS, which is CDK for communicators, basically. So again, you have some sort of spec, and you want to generate some spec, and in between you do your magic thing. Earlier this year, I think in April or so it was, or March, I'm not sure, I did like a little proof of concept, TerraStack, which essentially applies the same thing to Terraform, which works quite well since it's the same mechanics again, right? And so I'm still working on this. There will be some update rather soon, I think, and so which makes it usable, right? So at the moment it's a proof of concept, but I think like with the next update, it will actually become usable. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there will be more, or maybe there are more already. So wherever we have like configuration, like you have some kind of spec, and you want to generate some configuration, well, CDK is like a pretty good container for abstracting this a bit, making it useful. Having said that, I think the actual work is not generating those resources. The actual work is abstracting those resources, right? So level 1 is pretty straightforward in the end. But abstracting this is manual work, and manual work is always difficult, and you have to think about it. And so, yeah. But anyway, talking about abstractions, so they're like, besides from the core packages or like the core library, they're like third-party constructs as well. Like the solutions team of AWS recently announced like a construct pattern thingy, like libraries, which follows this well-architected framework, and they provide like a bunch of solutions off the bat. CDK patterns is like I think like an individual developer from, I'm not sure, from Ireland or UK, something like this. And he's also essentially, he started way earlier than the solutions construct thingies, and they're like, I think he published recently like a blog about the 20 patterns which he's using there. And it's quite good, since you really can just do an npx run pattern XYZ, and it will just deploy you the thing, which becomes quite handy. Yeah, here like a few resources. I think I will publish the slides somewhere and put them somewhere, I'm not sure. So there's this workshop thing, I think also by the AWS CDK team, the awesome CDK thingy from Elad. Elad is one of the, like, I think the principal engineer of that team at AWS. And there are like a bunch of resources listed, talks, libraries, and so on and so forth. So it's always good to look there. And shameless plug, I run CDK Weekly. So mostly every week there's like a digest of like what happened. And I think tomorrow, so it's usually on Friday, so it's a good time to sign up and get tomorrow's release. Any questions?
We might, just to keep things rolling, we might keep the questions in the chat. But thank you very much, Sebastian, for phoning in and giving the preso. Go flip.
Yeah, sure. Then just, well, ping me on Twitter if you have questions. I'm happy to talk about this in more detail.
Awesome. And we'd love to have you back sometime in the future as well to do like the 102, not just the 101. Awesome. All right, I am going to steal back the screen. And then I'm going to share again over here. All right, let's keep things rolling. So quick events plug. There's definitely been a lack of events recently because, you know, everyone's at home in quarantine, or at least we're not running physical events at the moment. But there are a bunch of virtual ones that are popping up. So the highlights of those, particularly in the APAC region, there's the Yao Lambda Jam, which is happening next week. They've got a really great selection of speakers there who are talking about functional programming topics. Always a really great lineup, definitely worthwhile heading along to it. There's also Web Directions Code Remote, and so that's happening in September. They're doing an interesting format where they're splitting it over a couple of Fridays. So they're doing it on in our time. They're doing September 4, 11, 18, and 25 for sort of 3 hours. So the same conference is spread out over 4 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But Web Directions is always a really fantastic conference, so definitely worth checking out. They also have a product and design and management one as well, if you that sort of thing. Similar format, but happening throughout November. So worthwhile checking that out. There's also the DevOps World Conference by CloudBees, and that's happening in September. It's a virtual event, 22 to the 24th. That one's going to be interesting because they do not care about people who are not in the US. So the time for us that conference happens, not so great. But if Matthew is able to join us from San Francisco for this meetup here, I'm sure we could do the same thing if we wanted to go to DevOps World. So the camera is yours. All right. That's it for events for the time being. So we normally do a jobs section during the face-to-face meetups. And the way that this works is that if you are looking to fill a position, either you've got an open position that you're trying to fill at your organization, or you are looking for work, you've got 30 seconds to be able to pitch either yourself or pitch the position. So quick show of hands. Feel free to pop your video back on. Is anybody looking to fill a position at the moment, either with an open position that they want to fill or looking for work? Hey, there we go. There's one. There's a couple of thumbs up, I think. Right, tell you what. I'm going to try something a bit different. We've tried that a couple of times. It hasn't quite worked. If you've got a position that you want to talk about, either yourself or a position you want to fill, pop just a +1 or a thumbs up emoji or whatever in the chat, and then we'll just call on you one after the other. So in lieu of that, Stefan, I noticed that you put your hand up a second ago. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So hey guys, I've grown up in Sydney, went to UTS, did IT, graduated in 2017. So I've been working in like the DevOps space quite a bit. I worked at AWS for 6 months, and then now I'm working in the WordPress space. I've been freelancing, hosting WordPress myself for the last 3 years. So yeah, I'm actually giving a talk, lightning talk this evening about WordPress security. So if you guys know any jobs in that space, or even in web design, I'm pretty open to new roles as well. All right, thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Stefan. All right, is there anybody else that is looking to? We've got Sanshia there. Do you want to pipe up for 30 seconds? And if you're looking for work at the moment. I'm going to take that as a no. Awesome. All right, is there anybody else that is looking to fill a position at the moment? Or anybody else looking for work? I've counted 8 in my head. Nobody's put up their hand. That's okay. We'll keep rolling with the next round of talks. All right. So we're doing a little bit out of order. We had Matthew giving his lightning talk at the very beginning. So thank you very much for that. Next up, we've got Isha Dalal from NAB in Sydney talking about designing solutions with a DevOps mindset. I'm going to cede control and hand over to you, Isha.
Hey, can I see my screen, all of you?
It's looking great.
Awesome. So, hey everyone, good evening. Today I'm going to be talking about solution designing or architecting with DevOps mindset. When we normally talk about DevOps, some of the myths around that is DevOps only matters to engineering or operations. Adopting tools makes you DevOps. You can't have DevOps without cloud. And my favorite one is DevOps means going to conferences. Oh, I love that. But that's not DevOps. I'm Isha. I'm presenting here for the first time in this forum. I'm very excited about that. But I have been attending this meetup for a while. I'm a solution designer at NAP and previously worked with IBM with clients across globe, US, Singapore, and Australia. And I help teams with designing, architecture, security, regulatory requirement, collaboration, and delivery. We work together as a team to deliver outcomes. Today, I'm going to be talking about the same culture, about collaboration, transparency, teamwork, how we are improving our day-to-day practices with technology, and a lot more. And this culture is DevOps. So when we talk about DevOps mindset, what exactly is a mindset? A mindset is the lens through which we view the world, how we perceive the world. And when we talk about DevOps mindset, it's actually not a tool. And I'm going to quote about Jez Humble, principal consultant at ThoughtWorks. He said that DevOps is not only a tool, but a mindset. DevOps is the organizational mindset that enables continuous delivery, a focus on everybody working together to improve development performance measures, such as throughput, while working at the same time, increasing stability and reducing mean time to restore service. Which is rightly said, it's not one person in the team with a DevOps role doing the DevOps activities. It's the team working together, enabling the DevOps culture and mindset. When an organization wants to make the transformation to a DevOps organization, the first thing that comes to the mind are technology-based, create pipelines, automate scripts, bring people together, monitor, etc., etc. But only implementing the technology and putting people in the same room is not a guarantee for success. It's the culture that helps the team, a safe environment where we encourage learning from both success and failures and focus on improvement instead of blame. So before we go into how it should be, let's talk about what are the gaps when we do solution designing. Traditionally, the architecture and the designing of the solution was done by someone else, and the solution then given to devs to develop, and it will be given to operations to support it. There's a huge gap of communication and collaboration between all these steps. There's been some great progress across the industry in reducing the gap between engineering and operations by using you build it, you own it. But it shouldn't be one person in DevOps title responsibility to do that. It should be a team effort. So if you look at the DevOps model, it's a cycle that you do design, develop, test, and then support it with a team, not just one person. And from that support, you find the learnings and the gaps. And that goes as an input to your design again. It shouldn't be a one-way path. It should be keep on learning path. So going forward, I'm going to be talking about 5 major topics for the DevOps mindset. There are heaps and heaps of other topics, but we'll focus on 5 for today, 10 minutes talk. The first one is focus on building the ecosystem rather than focusing on one narrowed problem. And the reasoning behind that is when we design a solution, it should definitely fix the problem that we are trying to solve. But the solution shouldn't create a new problem with the design. It should complement the existing ecosystem with technology and improve it. Designing software application program is like building Lego. You may have independent units of code that communicate with each other to serve specific purposes. So when you're designing a piece of Lego, you also need to think how this will fit in the overall design. When I normally design, I usually think apart from solving the problem, which is yes, the thing we are designing for, apart from solving the problem, think about how does it meet the overall security requirement, overall compliance, regulatory requirement. How does it go with the existing way of working, existing flow of it? Is this the right technology to go with? Loosely coupled designs. Loosely coupled designs or architecture, aka microservices. These are the most top topics these days. These are lean with a single responsibility, without many dependencies, allowing teams to work independent, deploy independent, fail and scale independent, increasing business responsive. Currently in my role, I'm pushing for this in my organization Things are built in legacy format and very tightly coupled, which is not great in today's environment where we have to deliver fast and to serve the customer in a proper way. We are starting with this simple small functions and microservices and get them prod ready, slowly moving away from monolith to microservice pattern. Don't jump to solution. This is a very common issue which I have seen in traditional way of working. You got a problem and you jump straight to the solution and you start discussing about the pros and cons of the solution. How does it fit? How does it fit? But from our perspective, when you think about a problem, take a step back and ask the question, why? I always ask this question, why? Why are we doing this? What's the requirement? Separate from the problems. Requirements and problems are separate. Often, the problem that we are trying to solve is never the requirement. I've heard this many times. We are building a solution, but there's no requirement for that. The more you ask the question, the better you understand the problem. Space for continuous improvement. When you design something in today's world where you have to deliver so fast to the customer and you have to deliver, like I've seen Amazon deliver every day, like every minute they could have deployments. But when you do those fast development and deployments, you always need to have a space for improvement. You have designed the solution, it shouldn't be the only outcome that can be delivered in production. It should be a collaboration with the team. And the best idea about that is diversity of thoughts. The more you talk to different people, the more diverse thoughts will come. And you should enable your design to incorporate those different ideas. Collaboration. This is the heartbeat of DevOps mindset. I normally use whiteboards and get the team around that, use different colors for psychological influence, communication, information, and discussion. Colors have a great influence when you are explaining and discussing your stuff. So do more of that. Have the transparency in your design and decisions. Make more collaborative culture. You shouldn't fear of failure. It should be a part of your usual cycle and encourage similar to success. So before I close my presentation, I just want to make some closing remarks. When implementing DevOps, besides all the great automation and technology, people are involved and need to be on board in order to make it work. Technology is not enough. It is using the technology that makes a difference. This is why growing a DevOps mindset without fear is key to your success. Any questions for me? Or we're going to do the questions later?
Oh, we can take one or two just to keep it rolling.
Okay. Any questions for me? Okay, so I see George's question. There is many decades of varied experience here tonight. What are some of the tell signs that show DevOps? Oh, that would be the question to audience, I guess. And warning signs that don't show DevOps. From what I see, my experience would be, like is you got the architecture design and given to your team, and it would be like, okay, this is how you will work, and within this constraints, how will you challenge that? How will you challenge that culture? That would be asking the questions, challenging those decisions that's been thrown to you. That this is how it is. Why? What's what it is, what you can change in that, what you can improve in that, and why this particular technology. And often I've seen that you have a great design in your mind, you have a great architecture in your mind, but your whole organization can't support it because of the skill set, because of the licensing, because of the time frame, costing. So these decisions also impact some of the architecture design discussions. But you need to also have a trade-off or a balance that you still want to go forward with the new technology or with taking the whole team together and have a space for learning, that the design architecture that you have done it should have a phase of learning and improvement so that it can incorporate the different ideas.
All right, great. We might wrap it there, but if you've got any more questions, feel free to drop them to Isha in the chat. Round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isha. All right, next up we've got Stefan. I believe you should have the permissions to share your screen now.
Okay, I'll try it now. Should share this one. I'll share the whole desktop. Should be okay. All right, that's it there. Share. Oh, yeah, no, wrong one. Present. Close. There you go. Yeah, my laptop's a little bit slow, so to bear with it sometimes. You can guys hear me properly, right?
Yeah, we can see a loading screen.
Yeah. Oh, sweet. All right, cool. Yeah, I think because when you share screen, it uses a lot of CPU for Zoom, like 60% on my dual core Mac. But yeah, this is my talk. So it's about hardening WordPress security. It's just findings I found hosting WordPress, like self-hosting it on GCP for the last 3 years. My first website was like owneroom.com. It was basically a startup that I tried to found with another co-founder. But yeah, that was my first like experience of WordPress in 2017. And then after that, I kind of founded my own freelance business, just doing the same kind of work, but more focused on helping other clients. So yeah, Cider Design is my freelance business, and then that's my personal site, Steph's site. Yeah, so that's a bit about me. I did give a talk last year at the Microsoft Reactor Startup Hub. It was about hosting like free static sites and a little bit on WordPress, but not so much. So this one's more focused on WordPress. Yeah, so I got an AWS Solution Architect Associate certification. I was working there in 2017. Yeah, I was like a graduate contractor. But then I kind of found I wanted to like maybe work in a smaller company or even focus more on design, like web design. But yeah, I still have that whole suite of knowledge of hosting websites. So it's never gone away. I've always used it hosting my own websites, and I'm always cautious around security as well, because there's always like some new plugin being exploited, or there's some loophole somewhere along the stack, which I'll go through on the next slide. That was my first meetup, if you're interested. I don't know if they still run meetups like that specific one, but yeah, it's still there on meetup.com. So yeah, just to give you a brief like glimpse of my history working with websites. So yeah, 2012, I launched my first personal website. It was like on shared hosting. And then on 2013, I migrated it to a VPS. That was like really cool because DigitalOcean has their own like really good documentation, basically community written as well. And yeah, I got like the first dedicated IP address through them. And yeah, it was quite cool to see, because with shared hosting, you don't really know what's going on under the hood. It's just like, yeah, here's your account, and you just put your website through like FTP. And then yeah, December, I tried to play around with like, in 2013, played around with AWS. It was like, everyone was talking about it at Fishburners, the old building. And I was like, what is this? What is AWS? Like, I don't know anything about it. I know like people can host websites on it, and it can do it a lot more as well. But yeah, once you play around with a few services, you kind of get the gist of it. And then GCP came along in like 2016, 17. I was like, it was around before then, but I kind of touched it at that point. I just wanted to see how it compared to AWS. Yeah, I'm not sure if like you guys can see the faces, maybe not for the Zoom faces, but it's covering half, a little bit of my screen. Yeah, I started Cloudflare at that time. Let me just minimize that. Yeah. Yeah, Cloudflare I started in 2012 as well, because that was my first site. So I've had like 8 years of experience using Cloudflare. And yeah, there's obviously been conferences with AWS and GCP over the last few years, which I've been to just to get like more experience and meet people. Yeah. So the problem is like WordPress security happens at several layers. There's obviously plugins which get exploited from time to time. Like just last month, there was like Elementor 0-day exploit. Elementor has like 2 million installs. It's basically a really popular page builder. It came on the WordPress market like 2-3 years ago. It's like Divi, if you heard of Divi. The old one was like Visual Composer, which is really hard to use. And yeah, so Elementors became really popular. They patched it, but it was like an exploit to do with if the user was logged in, like authenticated, like it will sort membership websites. Yeah, you can Google it if you want to read more into that. I've only got like a 5-minute talk, so yeah. There's WordPress thing updates as well. There's WordPress itself, like WordPress core. There's updates, export, backup. You can, yeah, I highly recommend you export your WordPress database before doing like updates, or at least take server snapshots, because updates generally tend to make your site go down more often than not. And yeah, you can move the login page with another plugin. It's called like WPS login, which I've done to my website. So usually attackers, that's the first thing they will go to, or there's like scripts that will automate like brute force attacks, and they go to like yourdomainname.com/wp-login.php. If you move it into another directory, or you can label it anything with this plugin. So for example, you can label it like /ABC if you want to, and that will take you to the login page. And that way it's like obfuscated. And then yeah, you can use 2FA for your login as well. So that's basically when you get the text on your phone for logging in with your WordPress admin. Yeah, then on the server side, there's like PHP, which has to be updated as well. There's MySQL. So these are all like packages, dependencies for WordPress. There's the web server itself. So Nginx is quite popular these days. Apache, I don't think it's used as much, but it's still around. They both require updates. Nginx is like kind of faster, so that's why it's preferred method. And I think it's a bit more flexible because PHP is like a separate module in Nginx. Yeah. And Linux kernel itself has to be updated. And also the CDN layer, so the Cloudflare, or if you're using another CDN, that can help obfuscate your IP address so you don't get DDoSed on your server. And then they also have like WAF, web application firewalls. You can also have that on your as a WordPress plugin like WordFence, but at the CDN level, it's like a layer before it hits your server, so it's beneficial to do it there as well. And then yeah, you can have 2FA for your CDN login. I recommend 2FA wherever you have a login, because today like attacks are getting really, really more sophisticated. And then yeah, there's your host or like cloud platform firewall rules, like security IP tables. Like, so you only allow SSH from like a specific IP address range, or even like one IP address if you want. And then obviously you just like allow HTTPS and HTTP or to like the world, or depending what you want to use. Usually it's just, if you're using Cloudflare, you can just open HTTP and then Cloudflare handles the HTTPS stuff for you. But yeah, there's different ways to implement that. Yeah, so the problem I found using Bitnami on Google Cloud is you can't actually update like the several dependencies like PHP, MySQL. You have to like launch a new server and then migrate all of your WordPress install over to the new server, which is kind of tedious if you just want to update like PHP, MySQL, or the web server. So usually in Ubuntu, you can just do like sudo apt-get update and then upgrade, and it should technically work. I think I was doing that initially, but yeah, then you have to like make sure you're testing it in a staging environment first, because you don't want to be changing stuff with a live website and then it goes down because you push the change. That's why I recommend the server image backup. So I always take like automated snapshots at least every day, even if I'm not working on it. Like Google Cloud will just do that for me. You can do it on AWS as well. Yeah, so that's basically a link. I'll link the slides later on as well in the meetup page. Yeah, that's basically what I was saying. So snapshots are incremental, meaning they don't take a whole snapshot every time. It just takes a snapshot of what changed. But it's still quite a process. You have to do it on the cloud platform layer. It'll be good if there was, I think that's the next slide. Yeah, if there was like some kind of Git tracking, and there probably is. I just probably haven't explored it yet. So usually when you're working on a server with SSH, you're making a lot of changes. If those changes could be like tracked and pushed to like a GitHub repo, then you can easily revert a server config. I know there's like other tools out there that they kind of exist in this market, like server management kind of package tools, but I haven't really explored them. If anyone has any recommendations, yeah, feel free to throw them in the comments or just message me later. Yeah, Docker, I've heard a lot about. Haven't really explored it that much, to be honest, but it's a very popular tool. Maybe it solves some of these issues that I'm having. So yeah, I kind of just thought in my head roughly like, what could I do to solve this issue of like Bitnami not easily allowing you to saying I wish there was like a Git for tracking web server changes, like when you're SSHing into different files, like server-side config files, could be Nginx or WordPress config file. It would be good if something was automatically in the background, just looking for differences and like uploading them to GitHub, so that way you can easily revert changes you've made. That was one of the first issues I've experienced when I was dealing with like SSH. I know there's like Docker, which kind of attempts to make everything more consistent and with updates as well, but I haven't really tested Docker yet. It's something I've been meaning to do for like more than a year now. It just, yeah, you know, when you're trying to trial a new technology, it's like you have to invest a considerable amount, and because it's just me working on my business, I have to manage like marketing, web design, plus sit down and try something new every once in a while if it's popular. Yeah, so that comes into my next slide about solutions. It's like use the Docker. Yeah, I could use Docker to update the different dependencies for WordPress. So the packages, which Bitnami you can't do. I think you can do on, you know, like Ubuntu where you do like sudo apt-get. That should work. Yeah, or you can use a managed WordPress host. So there's pretty much a few of them around. SiteGround is like a shared host, which it can affect your first time to buy it, I've noticed. I actually work for, like right now for Pressable, which is like owned by Automatic, which manages WordPress core code and WordPress.com. But Pressable is more for like self-hosted sites or agencies that need help, or just managed like hosting environments. So we manage all the updates for them, but I don't specifically myself manage the updates. Like it's already done. I just manage the platform, and like if customers have issues with plugins, we just help them out with that. Or it could be like a CDN issue, like a site's not loading fast enough. Yeah, so they all do roughly the same thing. Yep, that's what I mentioned before. Use apt-get. Let me just go to the next point. Oops, I've got like all these Zoom things in my way. Yep, you can use Google App Engine, which I trialed. It's quite fast, but I haven't really trialed it with WordPress yet. Just with like just a Node.js application. So I'm curious to see how that runs against WordPress. And there's like Beanstalk for AWS. There's also, you can migrate to a new Bitnami image every 6 or so months, which is like the only solution I saw if I stuck to Bitnami. And yeah, I don't really have the bandwidth for that, especially when life gets busy. You're working in some job, right? You don't have time to like do that for every site that you manage. And like if I have clients that come on board as well, like I'd probably just go with the managed host option, to be honest. There's also good links as well. You can scan your site, like the security site. They're like a plugin on WordPress, which they offer a CDN service as well, but they're a security plugin similar to WordFence. It gives you like an audit of what could be improved, like if your PHP is out of date. There's also this one here from geekflare.com. So they built like their own kind of audit tool. I would show you, but in the interest of time, I think we should just keep rolling. You can have a look at these slides later. Oh yeah, I did include some screenshots, thank God. All right, there's like, that's what I did it on my site. So I've been running the same Bitnami image probably for over a year now. So that's why PHP, I couldn't update it like on that server. I would have to make a new server from a new image from Bitnami and then export my WordPress install, which, yeah, fair enough. It's pretty simple once you're familiar with exporting WordPress environments. You just use the import export function on WordPress. It's like built in natively to WordPress, but it's a process you don't want to have to keep doing, right? Because it's a bit of time intensive, and maybe not everything will import correctly. And like, you know, find them replacing different addresses sometimes. Like I've had a few issues with that, but that's a different issue. And yeah, that was my other talk from last year. If you want to go back and have a look at that, there's also a video on YouTube. Hopefully I can get like some kind of recording for this video and put on YouTube as well. Yeah, that's basically me. If you want to contact me, and I think that was basically it. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or just ask me later on like Twitter or LinkedIn. Yeah, that's my email address too. And yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Stefan. I appreciate you jumping back in after it stopped working as well.
It's all good. Thank you for letting me do that.
No problem. Raji, take it away.
Am I audible? Can I continue?
Yep. We can hear you just fine. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Yeah. So my topic is on why SRE and DevOps are essential during COVID. I will, for some time, let's leave the COVID part, because we have been hearing a lot about it, and I think it's going to stay for some more time. So I will just let you know why SRE and DevOps are essential, irrespective of this pandemic time, or before the pandemic, or once the pandemic is over, how this is going to be. So when I was looking through this topic of why DevOps is essential, I was reminded of this book, Start with a Why, by Simon Sinek. I'm sure many of you would have read this book. If not, at least the concept of this golden circle of you start with a why. So why is the purpose with which you do any business, or the purpose for any change. So that's the core purpose. That's what is why. And surrounding that component, that's the process by which you will be doing. And around that is what are you going to do to achieve your core purpose. So I thought it was relevant. So I'll just talk about why, how, and what with respect to DevOps. So going to why DevOps is essential. I would actually say DevOps is more of a mandatory rather than an optional feature or the field that you want to call. And to get into the details, I want to give a 1-minute history of when did all this start. So this all started because of this digital transformation. The industries around us, you take any industry around us, be it automobile or finance or the IT itself or education, manufacturing, retail, take disruption because of digital transformation. And this is not something new. The digital transformation has been happening for the past 15 years now, and the industries are in various stages of moving to the cloud. And I should say this COVID-19 has only added to it. So this very own conference, meetups, which used to be a in-person meetup, which I would have loved to do it in person as well as I have done earlier in Sydney. I've done other meetups too. Now this is moved to virtual. And anything, even the gyms have all moved to fitness apps, online classes, educations have been moving to, kids are all getting trained now in online classes. All their classes are moving online, shoppings, everything is moving online. We are not going out anywhere. So what does this mean? This only means that more and more businesses are adopting digital, moving to the cloud, and the more and more newer businesses are born. There are a lot of study around this, which says every day there are thousands of businesses that are being born. So why then this is the core purpose why DevOps itself started coming up, because there are so many businesses, there is so much of competition. How do you stay ahead of your competition? So what you need to do for that, those things pop up, and that's when this parameter of performance is important. Because in this internet world where everything is in your hand, on click of a mobile, you can do anything and everything you want. Performance is very, very important. None of us have the patience or time to sit through pages that are going to take forever to load. See, now we just move on to next person and we keep moving. So that's why we say slow is the new down. There's no point in having your systems up and running if they are going to be performing very slow. And that is the core purpose for which DevOps are trying to achieve. So DevOps and SRE are no longer an optional one. They are the mandatory component of any organization. And I see them as the two sides of the same coin. If DevOps is about what you need to do, as Isha was talking about, that's a mindset, that's a culture, the core principles that you have. SRE is more about how you do them. How do you practically do those things? So it's more of two sides of the same coin. So that is the core purpose with which the DevOps itself came into existence. How do they do that? How do they make sure that they stay ahead of the competition? How do they make sure that they win customers? How do they make sure that they are able to retain customers as happy customers? It is through ensuring seamless end user experience. User experience is very important. It could be in the product, or it could be in your support, could be in any form. But the experience is important to gain customers in your business and to retain them. They become loyal customers, brand ambassadors of your business. So now that this is ensuring user experience is important, what should someone do? What should a DevOps person do to maintain end user experience? What are the challenges that they have? There are various challenges for any person, but I'm just stating the 3 important challenge. First one is uptime. Now that all the resources have moved to the cloud, be it your websites or your application, your infrastructure, your private cloud, public cloud, anything you take, they have to be up and running. And the industry is fine with 99% uptime. 99.9% uptime is something good that the industry accepts. That's the primary challenge for any DevOps. Second is, as I already said, performance. So there's no point in having all your resources up and running if they are going to be performing very, very slow. So keep in mind, performance is very important. The third is security. Now that all the resources are moved to the cloud, taking care of customers' data, privacy, security are all important. So having said these 3 challenges, what should DevOps is also DevOps or SRE are also human beings. They are not superhumans to sit in front of all the systems to make sure that everything is up and running all the time. So what's the solution? How can they achieve this? Through monitoring tools. There are many, many monitoring tools out in the industry that gives you availability and performance metrics for all the layers, be it your websites or your infrastructure or your applications, to find out where the problem is and to improve on it and to improvise and be on top of your competition. You need monitoring solution. Depending on what your business is and how you want to take it up, you need to choose the monitoring tool. Choose the right set of tools that you would want to use. And I am from one such department from Zoho Corp. Site 24/7 is a monitoring tool. It's an all-in-one monitoring platform which lets you take care of all your monitoring needs from one single console. We do website monitoring from 100 different locations across the globe. We do have server monitoring for your Windows, Linux, or Mac server. Cloud, be it your private, public cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP, the cloud monitoring, the complete network monitoring of your servers, routers, switch routers, whatever you want to monitor. Application performance troubleshooting is important because you need to know where the problem is for your Java, .NET, Ruby, PHP, Node.js code. Real user metrics, the user experience and logs. All of this on top of it, you get alerting, reporting. It's all in one console is what is Site 24/7. And there are 10 different global data centers. We have one in Australia as well, where the data resides only within the Australian region. Security and compliance and privacy are our core strength because we are hosted on Zoho's data center. We do undergo a lot of security and we take it very seriously. Site 24/7 itself has been in the market for the past 15 years now. It's not a small product. We have been a mature product which people can use. And as a part of giving back to the society in this pandemic times, just take a screenshot of this URL. I will also post this in this group. We are giving 6 months free subscription if people sign up using this URL for DevOps so that they can monitor their websites or servers to see how they can improve or how it will be helpful in their day-to-day life. So thank you. I'm open for questions.
Awesome. Just in the interest of time, we might keep the questions in the chat, but thank you very much, Raji, for joining.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, stay safe. Just want to take a second. All right, that is it. Thank you very much for joining. Quick, oh no, that's not what I wanted to show. Let me reload those slides. Hopefully it's going to put it in there. Yeah, perfect. All right, quick heads up for next month's meetup. We've got Bobby from AWS in Sydney talking about CI/CD for robotic development with AWS RoboMaker. So that's another full talk. Definitely come down to that. Bobby's a great speaker. He's spoken at some of the AWS reInvent events. So it promises to be really great. Yeah, like I said, that's it. Thank you very much for coming. Stay safe and see you online next month.
Thanks all. Bye.